What is going on, coin traders and algo fam? We are looking at Algorand ALGO on that ticker. Pretty rough looking chart right now after hitting the current trend high that came in almost at the 33-cent level, just shy of that at 32.96 cents. So obviously right now on the retracement from the trend high down to the low that we're looking at right now for the price. Come on, we're looking at a retracement of almost 55%, basically right at 55%. Which, if we actually talk about a Fibonacci, is basically from this previous trend, a 100% retracement. Obviously, don't want to see that. Typically, we do need to see supports in order to actually see continued upside, holding at least 61.8 or at a minimum 78.6, which would have been the almost 19-cent level. So that would have been a very good opportunity to actually see an oversold bounce in that instance, but did lose that and now are in jeopardy of actually breaking the longer structure to see a lower low on this chart, especially after such an extreme run-up. So overall, the trend on the move wasn't looking that bad, especially after breaking some of the resistances around 28 cents. And so if we actually look at a logarithmic extension for Fibonacci's up to the initial trend high down to the previous swing low, we're actually looking at an extension, which essentially is the distance and the length from this first trend to the bottom and the height of the second trend. So that is supposed to be a 100% extension here, and then obviously anything above that. So that is kind of a very nice trend setup to know that we were looking at that being kind of the magnitude of the highs that we were looking at. But obviously now, huge retracement, and despite the rest of the crypto space being down as well, that obviously has impacts on Algorand. So in the previous video, we were actually talking about, and that came out about a week ago. If you haven't seen the previous video, link is going to be up here in the upper right-hand corner. And we were talking about the 22-cent level being just an extremely strong and key level for support coming in for Algorand. So obviously now with increasing bearish volume on this huge flush, rest of crypto dumping too, obviously. But now it does become that much more important for Algorand to be able to hold a lot of these supports to the downside, especially after retesting the previous lows. So on the daily right now, looking at 1585, this is going to be a very key level. And then we are going to go after that down to a low of 1489. So an extremely strong zone of support that hopefully we can maintain price action on top of. So especially if we actually talk about closes for the current, then we would actually need to see 1585, ideally above the 16-cent mark. Now, with the current pullbacks and retracements, we're actually looking at Algorand being outside of the crypto top 60. So we are still seeing continuous slippage of Algorand right now in the market charts, and we are seeing a lot of names actually take over. So it is tough for crypto projects once they start slipping, especially this much, to actually regain enough momentum to actually push them back up, especially into the upper and top ranks. Now, we might see obviously movement a little bit more, but yeah, historically, we've never seen cryptos that have slipped this much and actually returned to some of the top ranks. So that's definitely something to be aware of. And it's not necessarily a knock on Algorand. It's just historically what we've seen for all the other cryptos. And we can even see it for other names like Tezos and Neo and things like that. Now, with all of that said, do want to zoom out into the weekly chart and just talk about the poor structure right now, especially after the weekly candle that just closed. Extremely poor. And we were hoping ideally that we could maintain support, especially after trying so hard to get a lot of these bullish crosses. Now to lose support after a back test is not the best sign for continued action, especially now testing some of these lower lows. So right now we were looking at the previous low coming in at 1484. Current weekly low coming in at 1484 as well. So perfectly defending, like we said, a 100% retracement on that move, which does mean we are in extreme jeopardy of actually breaking this structure and seeing a new lower low. So the thing about this structure too is that we went from a low to a new trend high, and then basically an immediate weekly retracement and rejection, breaking the structure to a new weekly lower low. So it hasn't happened yet, but that is what we are in jeopardy of if we don't maintain this huge big zone of support from 1585 down to 1489. So what that would mean is that we would actually set a new weekly lower low, and that would mean a new weekly lower high when we do get our bounce, and likely that would end up shaping up for a little bit more of a head and shoulders type pattern on this weekly chart, which probably would push prices down back into the lower teens And I don't expect a retracement down to any new all-time lows. But obviously what that would mean from there is that we are going to have a lot of up overhead resistance once again, especially now since we do have the weekly EMAs up overhead as resistance as well. And so these EMAs become much more relevant as resistance the longer it does take to break. And so that's why it was such a letdown for Algorand on this weekly candle when we just lost this support, especially after being unable to defend these exponential moving averages that the bulls fought so hard to actually flip and see prices on top of. Now, I do want to flip over into some of the shorter term charts right now. Looking at the 2 hour right now, we are looking at a bear flag forming and got a bear break from that. So even if we do look at potential targets based on what we usually expect out of technicals, then we would be expecting another retest of this low. So that's likely to be expected since in this type of pattern, we're not actually expecting the bounce and formation. Now, we could actually see that if we do see a lot of support coming in from this zone, like we said, but just based on what we expect from these type of flag patterns, the downside target is going to be the previous low down at 1489. So we are going to need to see that hold. So one of the other reasons, switching over into the hourly, that we talk about lower downside supports being tested again is that if we just look at the amount of bearish volume coming in for the magnitude of this pullback, we're not even seeing that much selling pressure come in. So it's kind of normal with what we've actually experienced even on this flag so far. So the bulls are just kind of unable to completely defend anything right now, and we're probably going to expect a little bit more defense as we do enter this zone. So probably once prices do drop into this zone, we would expect a little bit more increasing selling pressure if we do see a little bit more price action. So I don't think necessarily the same amount of selling pressure will likely break through this overall zone. So if we do see continuous bear volume that kind of looks like this, I would actually expect this whole zone of support to be a lot more of a relevant support level, and probably in that instance to get any further downside pressure would need to see a huge spike in selling pressure. Otherwise, we would likely see either a little bit more sideways action, or in that instance, like we talked about, this being an opportunity for the bulls to actually rally and see some upside movement here, especially if we're trying to hold a higher low. So personally expecting a return to this overall zone just based off of how the momentum is going right now. So unless we do get a huge influx of bull volume, then likely we are going to expect this momentum to carry us down into this overall zone here. So I do want to flip over into the 2-day really quick before we go ahead and wrap up, just to talk about all the selling pressure that we have seen. So it's tough to actually think how much more selling pressure we can get, but obviously if we do break structure, that'll be pretty significant. But what I'm trying to say right now especially is that if we actually go ahead and zoom in and look at the most recent trend high for this bounce right around 24 cents, we actually saw a pullback of almost 40% without any significant bounce. So we are going to be expecting a little bit more of that to be coming in, which is kind of one of the reasons why we hope that the support level will actually be relevant and see a little bit more buying pressure, because we would like to see a retracement and bounce, at least to test up now these exponential moving averages and test some upside resistances now. Obviously, huge break in structure, not a good sign for bullish continuation in the short-term future. So we are going to expect a lot more downside pressure and at best case scenario, some sideways action and consolidation while we do look to confirm some of these supports. So on this day, huge confirmation of support and resistance on these EMAs, which is one of the reasons why I like these 2-day charts, is because they have been proving to be a little bit more relevant. So support, we saw support again, and then obviously support in this zone. So we know that this is an extremely relevant indication. So these EMAs are going to prove to be pretty strong resistances when we actually do see a little bit more of that upside pressure. So again, bad side for a longer term continuation, but we're not expecting new all-time highs and higher highs right now at this point. Just hoping to be able to find and establish a bottom and then find a long-term confirmation of support before we do look to see any upside gains. But right now, like we said, huge jeopardy and kind of on the brink, especially after such a short-term sell-off compared to all the work that it did take bulls to actually gain a lot of this price action. So more or less short-term pullback and sell-off that kind of just showed how easy it is to just break the structure after all the hard work that the bulls have done for Algorand. So with that, that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up the video on Algorand. Going to be a lot to look at whether or not these support zones do hold. Otherwise, extremely bad sign for this overall long-term price projection and outlook for Algorand, despite all of the tech announcements, the integration of Python, and all of that stuff. If you do want to chat more about Algorand, do talk about it plenty over on Twitter or X at @coin_trades is the handle. Do look forward to talking with you all over there. Also, drop me a note down in the comments sections, issues, predictions, disagreements, all that stuff. If you did enjoy the video today, would appreciate hitting the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet, so you can stay updated on all future Algorand content and other altcoin content as well. But yeah, that is going to wrap it up. Do appreciate all the continuous love and support. As always, means so much. Stay safe, take care, Algo fam, and I'll catch you back in the next video.